Ken Rosenthal out as a reporter for MLB Network. He is one of the most respected baseball journalists out there, but he said some things, some negative things about the commissioner of baseball during the dispute over when to start the season last year. And the commissioner didn't like that, and he was suspended, and we didn't really know about it at the time during the 2020 season. And then here we are, 2022 has just come upon us, and we learned that Ken Rosenthal will not be brought back at MLB Network. So this is a bigger story than it may seem. So we're going to break down all the ins and outs next on today's Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes. Well, actually, no. Right now we're providing episodes 3 days a week for the next 2 months approximately, and then we'll be back to 5 days a week talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, which makes me feel kind of old now. I've been doing this for a while, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well now, so check us out there if you have not already, and hello to those of you watching on YouTube. So, last week we were only able to do 2 episodes. Just to get that out of the way, I had to take a sick day on Friday, was expecting to do an episode, but was not able to do so. But we should be able to get back to 3 days a week for now. And like I said, on today's show, I want to talk about this kind of under the radar bombshell news that Ken Rosenthal will not be brought back on MLB Network. The reason this is so significant for me is because, the fact is MLB Network is owned by the league. They may have the appearance as kind of just the big baseball channel that is representing the players and the owners and the teams, but really they just represent the owners. The station ultimately is the owners, and I think that this move, the firing of Ken Rosenthal or the not bringing back of Ken Rosenthal, speaks volumes about the way that the league operates. And specifically what happened was Ken Rosenthal wrote this really kind of harsh piece in 2020 that we're going to revisit today. This was written on June 16th, 2020, or published on June 16th, 2020 by Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic. The title was "Manfred Must Strike a Deal with the Players or Ruin His Legacy." So I reread it today, and it is pretty harsh. And some of the highlights, there's a lot. I took a lot of notes here. Basically, Ken Rosenthal is just harsh, but true. And the fact is, the kind of big picture is, Ken Rosenthal is pretty much universally respected in the industry as he's on the Mount Rushmore of baseball journalists today. Baseball journalists who are active in their craft today. I would definitely put him up there. He might be the first guy I name, to be honest. There's a handful of baseball reporters who would be on that list, and he's definitely there for me. And so for the network to just choose not to bring back Ken Rosenthal is, to me, stupid. It's dumb in a lot of ways, and it's also like they're just trying to take their revenge on Ken Rosenthal. And it strikes me as like the commissioner of baseball, Rob Manfred, just being not being able to let go of the fact that Ken Rosenthal is willing to criticize him. And so the idea is that, you work for me, you don't get to write negative things about me. But Ken Rosenthal is a journalist, and so what it tells me is that the league is more interested in pushing propaganda than it is in the truth and having baseball fans hear the truth. They just want anyone who turns on MLB Network to hear what the league wants them to hear. And I just don't like that. And honestly, my perfectly honest take on MLB Network, which doesn't really have anything to do with this, is that when it first came out, which I don't know, it was like 10 years ago or so, I think, uh, I was very happy with the network. And I was like, wow, a channel devoted entirely to baseball. And it felt to me like they were more fair to the Giants and other kind of West Coast teams and other, not that the Giants are a small market team, but they were more fair to smaller market teams, and they just covered baseball regardless of who it was. It didn't have this East Coast heavy bias like ESPN seemed to me to have. But as the years have gone on, I can't watch that network anymore because anytime you turn it on, they're talking about the Yankees, they're talking about the Red Sox, they're talking about the Mets, pretty much without fail. And the Giants will win their 100th game, and they're going to be talking about the Yankees' seventh starting pitcher and what it means that he has a bruise on his pinky toe. You know, they just have that East Coast bias. So anyway, they've gone downhill in my opinion already, and this is just the icing on the cake. You're intentionally not bringing back one of the most universally respected reporters out there. How is that a good idea? And to me, like, if I had a choice with like to buy MLB Network or not, I'm hands down like canceling my subscription because I don't really stand for this. Like, I don't really stand for any kind of news outlet that muzzles its reporters. They're basically telling their reporters, you are not here to give your honest take, even if it's harsh against us. You are here to perpetuate propaganda that is pro league. And they must have been particularly concerned given the lockout that Rosenthal was going to continue to do this, and he was going to provide negative, perhaps, coverage about the league. Even if it's true, they don't want to hear it. They don't want other people to hear it. And so to me, that's like state-run media. That's like what some of these news networks that are, political news networks have become as well. And so it's just sad that MLB Network is choosing to go down that road. And it's not just about MLB Network. It's about MLB at large, and that this is how they want to operate. So coming up in a minute, we're going to read some of the highlights of this article, and we're just going to continue to kind of talk about the fallout from this. To me, it's going to backfire to me, and I'll tell you why in just one moment. But first, it's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit, and really, whose isn't, or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar, but makes it easier to stick to your resolution. Because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars which can be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. You want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring. By week 3, you might be thinking, this isn't worth it. Show me the chocolate. Well, Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and a typical bar has just about 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar. Absolutely amazing coming from a bar with such great taste. Like, seriously, you'll think it's a candy bar. So right now, go to BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right. As promised, we're just going to continue talking about the fact that Ken Rosenthal was let go by MLB Network and how I think they're a bunch of bozos for making this decision. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. So I want to talk about what I was saying about how I think this is going to backfire on the league. And the reason is, right, so the reason they don't bring back Ken Rosenthal is because they're worried about negative publicity. And we'll read some of the highlights of Ken Rosenthal's piece from last year to show you what we mean by potentially negative publicity. If he writes more stuff like that about this lockout, they just don't want that. And the commissioner probably specifically doesn't want it because Rosenthal targets him in this piece. But it's just journalism, right? It's just journalism, but they don't want that. But so that's what they're worried about. But to me, it's going to backfire because Ken Rosenthal is so pretty much universally respected in the industry. I was saying on Twitter, I don't think that every single casual fan is going to notice that Ken Rosenthal is no longer on MLB Network, right? They're going to tune in and watch who's ever on there and not really understand who wasn't brought back. So that's kind of what the league is looking out for, is a wide range of people just not hearing Ken Rosenthal's voice. Again, muzzling a journalist. But what is problematic and what I think is making this a bad decision is that every other journalist, myself included, but journalists with way more clout than I have, are thinking today about how the league is muzzling a journalist and how they are, they've taken one of the most universally respected journalists and said, we won't have that on our network. And so tenfold of the negative attention and publicity is coming their way today and in the future. I think that the league has done themselves damage with this move, and that, other journalists now are going to have a more negative view of the league. And as we go forth in this lockout, people are just going to be more and more skeptical, as if we weren't already, right? So the league didn't have a great reputation right now anyway. Rob Manfred certainly doesn't have a great reputation right now anyway. And now you've just gone and backstabbed someone who is a favorite among fans and other journalists. So I just don't understand how they think that that is a good idea. I guess they're going to have more positive takes on their network, and it's also going to scare other reporters on their network. If you work for MLB Network, you best believe that if you talk poorly of the league, they're not going to tolerate that. And to me, I don't tolerate that. And I just, I think I've been more fair or more patient with the league and with Rob Manfred than maybe he even deserves. But at this point, it's kind of pushed me over the edge. That's how significant of a move this is for me. I'm not going to just blindly side with the players on every issue now, but certainly I just don't look at them the same. And they're kind of slimy to me after something like this. So anyway, I'm going on and on and on about that, but let's just get to some of the highlights of that article. Again, it's in The Athletic by Ken Rosenthal, published on June 16th, 2020. Title is Rosenthal: Manfred must strike a deal with the players or ruin his legacy. So the context of this is that Rob Manfred had been on ESPN. I think it was when the draft was happening. We were in the pandemic, of course. The season was on pause, and the league and the players were trying to work out a deal to start the season. So we didn't know at this point if we were even going to have baseball in 2020. So that was what was going on. And then Manfred on ESPN, I believe it was for the draft, so there was actually something happening in the game. And so Manfred was in the ESPN studio, and he looked in the camera and spoke to the fans. The question was presented to him, are we going to play baseball? And he said something to the effect of, absolutely, 100%, unequivocally, we're having a season in 2020. And so this set off happiness and excitement with fans and journalists. We all, even, journalists, they're fans first, probably. That's probably how they gravitate to being baseball journalists. So we all wanted baseball. So this was a great thing to see the commissioner say. And yeah, so that, I'm sure we did an episode the next day talking about that. But then 5 days later on the same network, I can't remember why he was back. Maybe it was just because he felt like he needed to make this correction. But 5 days later, he goes on the network and says he was not confident there was going to be a season. What? How does that make any sense? 5 days earlier, unequivocally, that was the word he used, unequivocally, there was going to be a season. 5 days later, not confident it was going to happen. So that was a bad look. And basically, Rosenthal was writing an article saying it was a bad look and that at this point he has to make sure there's a season or he's going to ruin his reputation. And that's just a harsh truth, in my opinion. It was what was he supposed to write? Commissioner defends his right to not have a season because the big, strong, brave commissioner can do no wrong and he's just trying to make everything work out. No, it was clearly a snafu and a bad look, and it made him look stupid. And, for writing this piece, Rosenthal, unbeknownst to us, was basically suspended from being on MLB Network. It was not announced, and as others have pointed out, it really didn't garner any public attention. So nobody really noticed that Rosenthal disappeared from the state media that is MLB Network. He did appear on the network for the trade deadline, but that was it. Otherwise, he wasn't allowed to be back, and he was paid according to sources. Sources with the New York Post, which was the source that broke this news in the first place. So I'm going into so much detail here, but let's just start with some of the highlights, and then we'll get to more as we go on. So Rosenthal said, quote, "Granted, the commissioner is forever in a tricky spot, empowered to act in the best interest of the game, but employed by the owners. Still, how does Manfred, in a span of 5 days, go from telling ESPN the season is, quote, unequivocally, telling ESPN the season, quote, unequivocally would take place, to saying on the same network he was, quote, not confident it would happen?" Rosenthal goes on to say, quote, "The threat of $1 billion grievance from the Players Association has forced Manfred to reconsider exercising his right to set a schedule for the 2020 season and return to his original mission of reaching a deal that is acceptable to both sides. What he wants now, according to sources, is to stop bickering with the union, start negotiating, and reach an agreement that will bring the sport at least temporary order. Yet, for a guy who suddenly is looking for peace, Manfred sure has a funny way of showing it. He and the owners, supposed stewards of the game, are turning the national pastime into a national punchline, effectively threatening to take their ball and go home while the country struggles with medical, economic, and societal concerns. Baseball is a business, we all know that, but it is a business that former Commissioner Bud Selig describes as a social institution with social responsibilities, a business that holds an antitrust exemption, distinguishing it from every other professional sports league. Such a business should hold itself to a higher standard, but in these talks, if you can even call them that, Manfred and the owners keep sinking lower, unless making dead-on-arrival proposals, tone-deaf public remarks, and other assorted blunders is your idea of negotiating savvy." Wow. So that is harsh. But again, I don't see anything in there that's kind of just inflammatory for the sake of being inflammatory. It's just journalism, right? And so if you look bad and they say you look bad, to me, it's an opportunity to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what are we doing wrong here? Or we're doing something wrong here. How do we be better? But instead, this probably infuriated Manfred, especially the comparison to Selig. I'm speculating maybe Manfred took it fine, but they're just like, you know what, we don't want this on our network. I don't know. But again, harsh truths, and they don't want that. So coming up next, we are going to read more of this report by Ken Rosenthal that got him basically kicked off MLB Network for good eventually. So stay tuned for that. All right, as promised, we are going to wrap up covering this story that Ken Rosenthal is not going to be brought back to MLB Network, and it's a big deal. I don't know how many of you watch MLB Network. I'm assuming a pretty large percentage, and it's known for being a pretty good network as far as league-centered networks go. I've watched some NBA Network, I've watched some NFL Network, and to me, MLB Network, at least in the past, was the best of the bunch. I thought their studio looked the best. I thought they had some good people on there, including Ken Rosenthal, who may have been my favorite. Anytime Ken Rosenthal was on, it was like, okay, we mean serious business. We're getting down to like what's really going on with the league, what's really going on with the players, and any kind of he's connected. Like Ken Rosenthal is pretty much best known for breaking news, and he does it pretty much better than anybody. Jeff Passan is up there, and others are up there, but Ken Rosenthal, I mean, he's just again on that Mount Rushmore. So to just say no thanks, we don't want you on our network, short-sighted and childish and immature and petty and dumb. So moving on, let's just read some other statements that Rosenthal made in this piece. He said, quote, "The best commissioners offer statesman-like presence and superior vision. Few ascribe those qualities to Manfred, ouch. And few would argue baseball is in a better place since he took over for C-League on August 14th, 2014. Rather than simply enjoy the fruits of the 2016 CBA, a lopsided victory for the owners, the clubs have gorged on them, alienating the players. And once again, they are valuing their own short-term interests over the long-term interests of the sport. Manfred considers himself a deal maker. He is reluctant to impose his will, even to achieve something as simple as a pitch clock. Fair and true. But once Union head Tony Clark responded to the third and most recent of the league's proposals by saying, quote, "It's time to get back to work. Tell us when and where," the commissioner effectively was boxed in. Then there's the matter of Manfred's difficulty in connecting with players, as evidenced by his description of the World Series trophy as, quote, "a piece of metal," when making a point on ESPN about stripping the Astros of their 2017 World Series title, which he did not do. The remark enraged players, and Manfred later apologized for it, but the mere thought offered insight into the way he thinks about his product. Manfred and the owners need to figure it out, and quickly. Most owners will win the game longer than most players, enabling them to eventually recoup their losses from 20, then profit from their franchise's resale values. Manfred, meanwhile, is supposed to be the adult in the room, a leader with a sense of the game's place in our society, a caretaker of the sport. If he blows this, it will define him. That should be enough incentive for him to strike a deal, period. So that's it. That's kind of the that's how he finishes out the article. I realize we may have had some connection issues on YouTube there. Those happen from time to time, and I apologize. If you want to hear everything without connection issues, the podcast itself on Apple, Spotify, wherever, those never are going to have connection issues. So sorry for the aside. For those of you listening on not on YouTube, you didn't have connection issues. But anyway, that was the article by Ken Rosenthal. There, some of that, I just cut out notes, and so that wasn't necessarily everything. There's stuff in between some of those quotes just for transparency's sake. But anyway, yeah, to me, that was just a truthful article, and the league doesn't want any part of the truth. And so I would implore you, if you have the choice, to boycott MLB Network. I just think I don't stand for that kind of stuff. If you can't handle the truth, then you don't deserve my respect and you don't deserve my money. But we are all giving them our money by watching baseball. So, I'm supporting the players first and foremost. And I think front offices, there's like some confusion sometimes. I'm a big fan of Farhan Zaidi and this new regime. They work for the owners, and the owners are the bosses of Manfred. But at the same time, you can be pro player and be in the front office, and they're not the ones determining. Like when people say this front office person is cheap, it's not their money, it's the owner's money, and so they're kind of operating under orders from ownership. So if ever there's criticism about someone being cheap or this and that, it's really look at the owners. Don't look at the GM or the president of baseball operations. It's not their money, so why would they intentionally make their team worse by spending not enough money, whatever the thought is? It's on the owners. And so, I don't know. I think the Giants are in a pretty good spot. They have their issues with their owners, yada, yada, yada. But as it relates to wanting the best for the game and wanting baseball being a social institution, I do think the Giants do a better job than most teams. But the point of today was about the Ken Rosenthal news, and that is all the time we have for today. We'll certainly probably continue to talk about this as we move forward. Coming up later in the week, we're going to continue to do mailbags. There will be at least one more mailbag, maybe two, as the week goes on. And there's other stuff out there. There's Marco Luciano talk from MLB.com and much more. So please keep coming back. We're 3 days a week for now. Eventually, when the season gets closer, assuming we have a season, we will eventually return to 5 days a week. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it, leaving a review, thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again, probably tomorrow, certainly by Thursday. Thanks again for listening. As always, stay locked on Giants.